Two guests today, Pat Caddell and Chris Garcia.
Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
Our first guest in segment one of this Newsmaker Show here on Monday is longtime pollster and political expert Pat Caddell. Pat Caddell, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Did you wanted to cover the recent primaries, Ohio, Kansas, Missouri, Washington? Your thoughts on those, and who do you think came out better, President Trump or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, as far as the endorsements and the successes went?
Well, I'd have to say that because of the importance of it, that probably President Trump, Cortez, I think she had three of her people she endorsed defeated, including in Kansas, where she and Bernie Sanders went out and endorsed a candidate in the primary, and that candidate lost, which was kind of a surprise to me. But Trump, look, for good or ill, basically, I think he's responsible for two things that happened that were pretty big. One is the Ohio race. I think, in fairness, you have to say that his going out the last weekend helped galvanize enough turnout. I'll come back to the issue about Ohio, but enough votes so that the Republican candidate, who was, I think, going to lose, was able to end up, I think, well enough ahead that that he'll win, and then they redo that whole same race again in November. The other one is he endorsed last minute the Attorney General who had headed up his vote fraud commission, Chris Kobach, and he is still a couple hundred votes ahead and they're still counting votes out there, but he's ahead in unseated the incumbent governor, who was succeeded to the office, Kohler. So, I think it was a better day for Trump, frankly. But I think that the real results about Ohio, that was a disastrous wake-up call for the Republicans. It seems to be that the Democratic turnout was far heavier in Franklin County. This is a district that Trump won by 11 points, and the Republican candidate barely held on. Had a lot to do with the turnout in the rural areas, which were down substantially from what they had been for Trump, and even the last congressional candidate. Turnout was uneven in that whole district, but the Democrats got a better turnout in the urban, suburban areas of Franklin County, which is Columbus. So it shook people up, I think, not as badly as if they had lost, because there would have been a panic of people, but enough to people looking at it to say this is not a good sign for November.
Any thoughts as to why the GOP was unable to get the people in the small towns out as much as before?
Because I believe, as I've said before, I believe that until the Republicans understand, the Republican Party itself, that trying to win these races district by district is a very difficult thing in an off-year election. Off years tend to favor people coming out who have a grievance or are unhappy or what have you, and that the Republicans have not nationalized this race enough. That not just in Ohio, but nationally. If they did, I believe they would. They have some very, very strong issues, but they're not promoting them. The question for the Republicans, seems to me, is, one, if the Democrats win, there's no doubt the House will impeach Trump, regardless of anything. They will do it as a matter of political course, and weaponizing the Constitution and putting the country through this for a couple of years, when I don't think they'll have the necessary votes to impeach him. To make it a political elimination is, I believe, a lot of voters would be upset by. Also on the issues like immigration and ICE and some of those things, and the Republicans have an advantage. And most of all, because the fact is that, the Democratic Party is kind of been an internal battle between its farthest left elements, and particularly its potential candidates for 2020, who are pulling the party hard to the left on everything. And, and part of it, as you asked about Ocasio-Cortez, I mean, whoever imagined that we would have people saying, well, yes, let's have socialism in America. Well, these are all things that can help bring out voters who may not be enthused about President Trump, but who have to look at this and go, wait a minute, I'm not sure I want any of this, or I want this. And so that is, in order to galvanize the base, they have to galvanize their issues, and I believe it has to be a national message because implicitly the Democrats have a national message, which is get Trump.
How is it and why is it that the whole Donald Trump presidency and everything about him is so different than other recent presidents?
Well, because the American people chose a candidate who was the first person elected president who had not been an office holder or a military officer in American history. And he is a disruptor. He was picked by the voters because he was their only vehicle for it, as I had talked about much in 2016 and wrote about, that this country is ready for, the American people are tired of the political class. They feel the country's in danger of decline and their children's futures, and there is a feeling that the system is rigged. And so they chose Trump, even though many of them did it not liking Trump or feeling that he was particularly well qualified to be president. They wanted a change. And that disruption has freaked out the political class in this country, which I also include most of the national political media, because and then none of them ever really asked the question or understood that it was aimed at them. What they see is that the people have deposited at the heart of American politics an alien force, and as an organism right into the center of the American political elite. And like anything biologically, that elite is trying to eject this disruption, this alien force that has been put in there by the voters. That is, you really must understand that concept to realize just how strong the feelings. Trump adds to it his own personality and so forth. But at heart, this is a struggle to get rid of the disruptor and go back to normal. And I'm not, and I think it's whether it's Trump or not, that we're past that day. That is not going to happen. But it is so. It's alarming to watch as a Democrat to watch many Democrats who were civil libertarians until now, who totally don't care about civil liberties, who accept the misbehavior or whatever, as the Inspector General found the FBI, and more things keep coming out. And basically they just, we have a news media that has chosen to act as a partisan outlet, and it upsets people. It upsets me because the job of the press, for the most part, is to protect the country, is to give people information and arguments and let them decide, like you're doing here. No, too much of it is, you see this on cable TV, where it is, we have a narrative, everything is evil about Trump, and we'll tell you what you ought to know. And I think that's a concern.
You were talking on this topic, you told WMAL radio down in Washington that you found the surveillance of the Trump campaign frightening. Yes,
and I'm shocked at the people saying, oh, there's nothing here, and so what, it's all right. No, it is not. At the heart of our democracy to have the agencies of government, particularly law enforcement agencies, deciding to put in spies or to infiltrate the presidential campaign of either party is such a frightening development, because it goes to that is the idea of the state power being used in that way ought to terrify everyone, because if they can do it in one election, they can do it in another. And, we're all looking at the question of, just how much did the Russians collude or not collude or involve whatever. And here we have one of our own premier law enforcement agencies on its own deciding to infiltrate and to, with agents, a major presidential campaign. They didn't go to the principal and say, hey, we have some concerns. No, this is unbelievable. Not even Nixon tried to do this in Watergate. And so as an American, I'm terrified, because you don't have to be a Democrat or Republican. All you have to know is this is an effort to undermine. It undermines your democracy and your right to choose. And that is not the business of the FBI or any agency, the CIA, anyone. And it is it's never happened that I know of, and it is really historically, and it is a threat to the democracy. It's an inherent existential threat to our democracy.
Pat Caddell, longtime pollster, political expert. You see him all over TV, hear him all over national radio. I can't thank you enough for coming on today. I enjoyed it immensely.
Great. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Pat Caddell.
It's an honor for AM 1480 WLEA to broadcast local sports. We couldn't do it without the help of our local sponsors. Thank you to the following businesses for making our 2018 Hornell Dodgers season so much fun to listen to. The Hartman Agency in Canisteo, Elderwood, Attorney Brian Chu, and Giovanni's Restaurant.
Meteorologist Rob Carolyn is back. Hey, Rob, how's the weather look for today?
It looks a little on the cloudy side, Brian, and there's the potential for some rain. In fact, it's already raining this morning in Elmira and Binghamton. We've got an upper-level low-pressure system over the northern mid-Atlantic states that's headed towards western New England over the next 24 hours. Going to throw some moisture back at us, unfortunately, keep us a little on the unsettled side. Looks like the unsettled weather will continue probably through tomorrow night, and then we'll dry out a bit for Wednesday into Thursday. Today, though, will feature a lot of cloudiness, some showers and thunderstorms popping up as the day goes on, temperatures 75 to 80. Sunrise this morning was at 6:16. Sun will set tonight at 8:14. We'll have scattered showers and thunderstorms in some areas tonight. There could be some locally heavy downpours, 60 to 65. Tomorrow, showers and thunderstorms continue, especially through the afternoon. Highs 75 to 80. Showers, thunderstorms possible tomorrow night, 60 to 65. Turning partly sunny Wednesday with the threat of a shower or storm, Brian. Highs 80 to 85. We're going to be partly sunny and warm on Thursday.
And we're back on Newsmaker here on Monday Morning, talking now with former U.S. Deputy Director of Commerce under President Trump, Chris Garcia. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Hey, you bet. My pleasure, Brian.
Well, first question. Now, our last guest in segment one was Pat Caddell, the pollster. He maintains that the feeling among the Washington establishment insiders is that the voters put Trump in, and Trump is disrupting the establishment's world. As far as the issue goes on trade and free trade, and I'm looking at this from a distance, but from what I can gather, the people who have more of a globalist view, more of a pro-Wall Street view, they dislike Trump on trade. But when I talk to factory workers, it's just the opposite. The factory workers think he's great. Your thoughts, and maybe I phrased that a little clumsily, I hope not, but your thoughts on Trump and trade?
No, you're spot on, Brian. Essentially what we have here is a political establishment, a political elite, even a media elite, and then, of course, you have the Wall Street elite who have benefited, who have profited off of the destroying of these American communities by shipping jobs overseas, and have lined their pockets with these unfair trade agreements that sell the American worker out, that sell American companies out. And what happens is it hollows out these communities, and you have these industries that have completely been tanked because of offshoring. What the president has come to the table and said is, why is it that we fail to compete with China? Why is it that we are allowing ourselves to engage in these unfair trade practices where China will keep American companies out of their markets, but we can allow them to sell into our markets? And so that's a little unfair. The same thing goes with the European Union or some of these NAFTA terms within trade situations with China and with Canada and Mexico. Why are we having these inequitable deals that we're putting up with? And so what President Trump is doing is coming to the table and he's saying, let's get this all down to what they call the 3 zeros. Zero tariffs across the board, 0 subsidies, and 0 non-tariff barriers.
Talking with Chris Garcia, our guest here in segment 2. How do you think that President Trump is doing in this, what they call a trade war with China?
Yeah, you bet. So here's the big move that was really underreported. Anytime we go after a trade adversary, is what I'll call China, we have to have a broad coalition of support. So when the president of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, came to the White House and met with President Trump, and they struck a deal between the United States and the European Union to try to work toward lower tariffs, to more free trade, more U.S. exports of beef, soybeans, and liquid natural gas from the U.S. to the EU. That was a huge move. Now we're close with Mexico, and I assume we'll be close with Canada as well. And then what that allows us to do is provide a unified front to tackle China's unfair trade practices. And remember, what China's been doing is they've been stealing our IP. They've been stealing the intellectual property from American companies. They also stole the F-35 fighter jet blueprints. And then, of course, they're subsidizing their industries so that they make their products much cheaper than American goods, which is unfair. And so we now have the strength, and we have an economy because of President Trump's domestic policies. We have such a strong economy that we now are negotiating from a position of strength, whereby China's economy is really on a downward spiral. Their currency is on a downward spiral. And so President Trump, again, knowing the art of the deal, he's negotiating from a position of strength, and he's striking at the perfect time.
Now, as far as lifting regulations go, this is something that conservatives argue has done wonders for the economy. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So the basic concept is this. If you're a business in the United States, and whether you're a bank, whether you're a small business, and the government has this red tape that is required to transact business, whether it's in a state, at the federal level, it's gonna hamper your ability to grow and scale your business. So whether that's unnecessary paperwork, permitting, restrictions on how you can do business, where you can do business, the president has come in and said, you know what, this is not what America was built on. What we're going to do is we're going to roll back these regulations, whether that's, and much of that has been through the Commerce Department where I was previously, and we're going to roll back regulations across the board so that for every one regulation, remember he promised for every one new regulation, we're going to eliminate 2 regulations. Well, when he had his big deregulation day a few months back, not only did he eliminate 2 regulations for every one new regulation, on average, it's been 22 regulations that he's rolled back for every one new regulation. So that allows businesses to really break out of their cage, so to speak, break out of the red tape that they've been tied down with, and to grow and scale their companies and not have to comply with these unnecessary, burdensome government rules and regulations, and allow them to operate in the free market. And that is what's unleashed such a significant economic growth in the last, 18 months that he's been in office.
As far as ethnic minorities go in the U.S., under President Trump Trump's critics have been constantly hammering away at the president. They say that he's a racist and against African Americans and Hispanics, while conservative supporters argue that the minorities are much better off economically under President Trump, and that the economy, especially for them, is booming. Your thoughts on the economic lives of minorities under President Donald Trump?
Sure. So, I mean, that's the thing, is President Trump hasn't really done a lot of pandering like previous administrations have done to try to separate and classify minority Americans, because President Trump believes all Americans are Americans. You know, he doesn't try to break up people into those different classes, but the facts will report exactly what you just said. Minority Americans, whether it's African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, you know, even women in America, are doing they're doing so much better under President Trump than the previous administration. And I'll tell you why that is. The president has, again, put America first. He's put in place domestic policies that have allowed us to reach all-time low unemployment rates for African Americans, all-time low unemployment rates for Hispanic Americans, all-time low unemployment rates for Asian Americans, all-time low. I think we're at a 65-year low for women in America. And so we also had a recent survey that came out that showed that 62% of Hispanic Americans felt that they were better off under President Trump than they were 2 years ago under President Obama. So the facts, you know, they show otherwise. You know, you have much of the mainstream media that fails to report these facts, but the facts prove otherwise. And the reason that Americans of all stripes, of all backgrounds, are doing better under President Trump is because he's taking this free market approach, and he's growing the economy. And I'll tell you, you know, it doesn't matter what kind of American you are. If you have the choice between a good-paying job and living off of the government, I'll tell you, most Americans, 9 out of 10, are going to take that good-paying job to provide for their families. So President Trump is empowering Americans of all backgrounds, of all stripes, and that is what's boosted consumer confidence, boosted business confidence, and frankly, that's what's we're going to see that sustained in the years ahead.
How does, and this is my final question for you, Chris Garcia, how does President Trump accomplish all this?
Sure. So the first thing is we need to continue. So remember, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was a major portion of economic growth. You had, of course, the rollback of regulations. Deregulation was a major component. But then it's also just, representing the United States very well with some of these foreign trade deals. I mean, think about it. Who doesn't want to sell to multiple markets? You want to sell to China. You want to sell to, the EU. You want to sell to Canada and Mexico. Of course, we want to export our goods if you're a business. But it's such an important thing to remember that you have to grow an economy, not through government spending, not through government purchasing, but through enabling and creating an environment that is conducive to business growth and conducive to entrepreneurship. And so if President Trump can continue these domestic policies, he can continue to grow the United States economy and continue to grow GDP by putting America first and putting these solid trade deals in place, renegotiating these trade deals. He's going to see sustained 3% GDP growth certainly through the next 2 years until his reelection, and I think through the next 4 years after he's reelected.
Chris Garcia, former U.S. Deputy Director of Commerce under President Donald Trump. I want to thank you very much for joining us here today.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Brian. Always good to be with you.
It's AM 1480, WLEA Hornell. Thanks so much, Chris.